born in South Korea to a Korean mother and a Jewish father. When I'm 5, we moved to Tacoma, Washington. My parents make the decision that my sister and I will be raised as Jewish, even though the community had so few Jews. We couldn't even find challah on Friday nights. So we always made the motzi, the blessing for food, over rice. And then we ate a big Korean meal for Shabbat dinner. One year, for Passover, we don't have maror, bitter herbs, for our Seder plate. And my mother says, we'll put kimchi on the Seder plate. It's a pickled, spicy cabbage condiment. It's a main food in Korean life. Kimchi's like maror, just better. Even though my mother is a practicing Buddhist, our rabbi never asks her to convert. And he always makes us all feel welcome. I became youth group president and song leader of my Hebrew school. And at 16, I go to Israel for a youth fellowship. It is the most exciting, spine-tingling learning I've ever done. And I deeply identify with Torah, our holy book, for the first time. But also, for the first time, I realize there's a larger Jewish community out there that won't recognize me as a Jew because I have a non-Jewish mother. In 1989, there are very few Asians walking around Israel. Little kids on the bus point and say, Yaboni, Yaboni! Which means Japanese. And when they see my Jewish star necklace, they say,
do you know what that is?
This also happens in the States quite a bit too. At services, I read from Torah, speak Hebrew, and can be drashing. And after an hour and a half of all this, people still come up to me and say, are you Jewish? They have all the clues pointing in one direction, but they can't get past the way that I look. It's a disconnect for them. 4 years later, I'm back in Israel, praying with women of the wall, an outsider's minion of women, trying to shine light on the fact that women are not allowed to read Torah at the Wailing Wall as men are allowed to do. But even in that group, I feel like an outsider. I feel like everyone's looking at me like someone who was there as a visitor, not as someone who belongs. Later, I call my mother and tell her about this other situation where a guy in Israel had said to me, well, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you because I only teach Torah to Jews, and you are not a Jew. And so I say to my mother, that's it. I don't want to be a Jew anymore. No one would know. I don't have a Jewish face. I don't have a Jewish name. I could just disappear as a Jew, and no one would know the difference. And my mother says to me, is that really possible, Angela? And it's not until that moment, when I consider just stopping it all, that I realize how much it is just who I am. And that I could no sooner shed my Judaism than I could shed my being Korean, or shed my being a woman, or shed any other part of me that is essential and is deeply rooted. Sometime after that, I share with my mother something that I've been thinking about for a while, that I want to become a rabbi. My mother gets tears in her eyes and says, will you ever be accepted? Because while she knows that I'm never going to not be a Jew, she also thinks I'm setting myself up for a life of discrimination, pain, and struggle if I put myself out as a leader of the community. 20 years later, I'm in Manhattan at Central Synagogue, a 2,000 family congregation, a flagship synagogue of the Reform movement. I am serving as their senior rabbi.
Wow. Yeah.
My mother was at my installation. Again, she had tears in her eyes. But this time, It was for the way the Jewish community really opened its arms to me as a rabbi and a leader. A lot has changed. For me, my mother, and for the Jewish people.
Yeah.